Humans were designed to create. That's why we get depressed when all we do is consume. Have you ever felt nauseous from just scrolling on your phone? That's a real neurological signal from your brain, punishing you on purpose by making you feel like shit, trying to get you to not just sit around. And while my first sentence makes this sound like it's just another video about brain rot, that's not the exact premise. This is just for creativity, inspiration, ideas, but that's kind of part of the backstory. Apart from that, it's true that consumption can kick off for creation. Getting innovated by what you take from it is where creativity comes in. I don't know your intention behind what you're consuming, but I'm going to start off. The first one's probably the most obvious, although it might not be obvious to everyone. But if you look at half the lists on Pinterest, you'll probably see it. That is, whenever you're in coffee shops, listening to the conversations around you for inspiration for something, or inspiration for whatever you're doing. Many authors recommend and use this technique in the book The Creative Act by Rick Rubin, which I do recommend if you want something easy to comprehend that's direct and straight to the point. It definitely holds value. But he mentions that if you're writing a scene and you have a character about to say something and they don't know what to say, just stop and listen around to the conversations in the cafe for a bit. Most often you can find something that someone says that you could work into the scene, that you could work into the character's dialogue. Chances are you're gonna find something you can use. The next is get niche inspiration from characters, scenes, or aesthetics. Go as deep as you want. For example, I've done this a lot. How to dress like Nikki Maxwell. How I feel like Silver Mist would dress. How to dress like Marty Supreme. How to dress like you're from a 90s chick flick.
How to dress Parisian chic.
How to dress like Old Money. How to dress like you're from the 60s. How to dress like you're on Euphoria.
How to dress like Aurora from Sleeping Beauty, dressing like the weird-ass outfit I wore in a dream.
How to dress like Jules Vaughn.
How to dress like Cameron from Ant Farm. How to dress like the smell of a basement.
How to dress like Princess Anastasia.
How to dress like BoJack Horseman.
And even in subtler ways, like Pilates mom meets model off duty. And you're ready to go say something inside your head so no one else can hear it but you. And you're ready to be everyone's favorite fairy. And you're ready to go still ask for a necklace and not be able to read the room after what happened with the cops at the park. But I would actually do that. And you're ready to go.
Grab a croissant.
Be in a niche Pinterest board. Girls Pinterest board in 60 years. And there you have it.
And you're ready to go berry picking in the woods. And there you go.
Ride your bike.
And I'm so happy when I have a cute outfit.
Niche princess.
Just as love.
On a similar note, which is basically just a hyper focus of the last point, you can go even more specific into certain categories, like making outfits based on one super specific niche, like cafe drinks as outfits, which I actually did. So yeah, especially when you have no idea what to pair together when you're trying to style some clothes. Take inspiration and observe the things around, especially in even the music you hear in different public places, restaurants, bookstores, cafes, etc. Shazam the song or ask Siri, which is what I do. I've actually found a lot of songs I like through this way, which I use in different ways. Like this one I found at a bookstore. Next, watch movies that you know give you inspiration and start to take notes on them. I don't know if anyone else had to do this, but back in school in like first grade, we would watch movies and we'd have to write down verbs, adjectives, and nouns we noticed in them. And looking back, it's actually a really useful tactic to gain inspiration. One of the most underrated ways to spark creativity is by listening to creative frequencies while you work, journal, paint, daydream, edit, write, etc. Certain sound frequencies and binaural beats have been studied for their effects on focus, divergent thinking, and relaxation, which is the type of thinking associated with creativity and original ideas. The most acclaimed 80-20 frequencies for creativity are alpha waves, which are linked to relaxed focus, imagination, flow states, and theta waves, which are associated with deep imagination, intuition, dreamlike thinking, and subconscious idea generation. Many artists, writers, and musicians use alpha frequencies while brainstorming because they help quiet excess brain noise without making you sleepy, while theta frequencies are often used for intense visualization, storytelling, and abstract inspiration. There's also growing research on binaural beats suggesting they might influence brainwave activity by encouraging the brain to synchronize with certain frequencies, improving focus, mood, and creative problem solving. Think of it as just a soundtrack for your imagination. One of the best ways to find creative inspiration is to write down your dreams as soon as you wake up, first thing, before your brain fully shifts into awake mode. Scientifically, dreams fade incredibly fast because your brain prioritizes waking information over stored dream memories, which is why even vivid dreams can disappear if you don't record them immediately. Keeping a dream journal trains your brain to remember dreams more clearly over time. Many neurologists and psychologists actually think that dreams help us process our emotions, fears, memories, symbols, abstract connections, which is why they can become such powerful creative material. Some of the most famous artists and writers in histories have used dreams to create their art. Stephen King has said ideas for his stories like Misery have come from ideas of plot lines in his dreams. And Mary Shelley famously conceived Frankenstein after a vivid nightmare. Filmmakers, musicians, painters, and writers have long drawn inspiration from dreams because they naturally create unusual combinations, surreal emotions, and symbolic ideas the logical mind rarely produces on its own. Even seemingly random dreams can contain incredible dialogue, aesthetics, emotions, locations, metaphors, or story ideas. I honestly think dreams are one of the most untapped creative resources because they give you access to a version of your imagination beyond everyday thinking. When a movie ends, assuming I liked it, I like to watch the credits. It's not for the most obvious reasons. It's not because I want to see who the actors, writers, or producers are. At least not usually. I like to see what song was used, the pace that the credits roll at, and the fonts and word positions they use. Got 2 niche books, and I don't read niche books till Aura Farm. I actually just am interested in anything about like Bengal, and it's something very quick is to simply speak aloud every idea or write it down in your notes app. Someone once said you should always keep track and jot down ideas you want to remember, because no matter how many times you tell yourself you'll just remember, you will forget. You don't even need to title the voice note. All you need to do is record and leave it untitled. Another incredible source of inspiration is music. It has a unique ability to shape emotion, memory, imagination, and even the way we think. Research shows music activates multiple brain regions involved in emotion, memory, creativity, and visualization, which is why a single song can inspire an entire story, character, painting, outfit, or video.
And I need you more than ever. And if you only hold me tight, we'll be holding on.
It also creates emotional states that spark ideas. A nostalgic song might inspire a coming-of-age story, while an epic soundtrack might inspire an entire fantasy world. Many writers, filmmakers, and artists intentionally use playlists to enter the emotional atmosphere they want to create. Personally, I love movie soundtracks, instrumentals, and songs that feel like they belong to another world because they trigger vivid scenes and emotions I never would have imagined otherwise. Sometimes inspiration isn't about finding an idea. It's about creating the feeling that allows ideas to appear, and music is one of the best ways to do that. One of the most fascinating ways to find inspiration is by exploring words from other languages that have no direct English translation. They capture emotions, experiences, and ideas that can completely change the way you think and create. Japanese is especially rich in these concepts. For example, Mono no Aware describes the bittersweet beauty of impermanence, Yutori refers to a sense of spaciousness and ease in life, and Ma is the meaningful space between things, like the silence between musical notes or the empty space in a painting that gives the rest of the composition meaning. German has countless unique words too, like Verschlimmbessern, meaning to make something worse while trying to improve it, and Kummerspeck, literally grief bacon, referring to weight gain from emotional eating. I love browsing collections of untranslatable words because each one feels like a tiny story, poem, character trait, or film idea waiting to happen. Sometimes discovering a single word can inspire an entire story, mood board, or even a new way of seeing the world. Another thing that might be obvious to some is annotating, but more specifically, underlining lines in books you want to remember or keep in mind for something. Steal from yourself. I mean, this video is about finding inspiration, even if it's just a weird-ass painting you made when you were 5 or a weird-ass story you wrote when you were 6. You can still generate ideas and inspiration from them. See what you can do and transform with it. One of the most interesting things I learned from this episode on creativity is creativity isn't a magical talent, it's a skill that can be trained. He explains that it lies on 2 thinking modes: divergent thinking, which generates many ideas, and convergent thinking, which refines them into something useful. Rather than trying to do both at once, he recommends separating them. For generating ideas, let your mind wander through walks, brainstorming, daydreaming, or open monitoring meditation. For refining them, switch to focused, structured work. He also explains that creativity often comes from combining existing ideas in novel ways rather than inventing something from nothing. My biggest takeaway was that creativity isn't about waiting for inspiration. It's about putting your brain in situations where new ideas are more likely to emerge. One of my favorite sources of artistic inspiration is studying film grain, texture overlays, and vintage visual aesthetics. While grain may seem like an imperfection, filmmakers and artists often use it intentionally because it adds atmosphere, emotion, and a sense of history. A simple grain overlay can make a digital image feel nostalgic, cinematic, dreamlike, or lived in. What I find especially inspiring is how this idea applies across every art form. A painter might recreate it with textured brushstrokes, an illustrator with paper textures or faded edges, and a writer by adding small imperfections, memories, or details that make a story feel more human. It reminds me that great art isn't always about perfection. It's often the texture, atmosphere, and imperfections that make it memorable. You can also use old school commercials from different decades as inspiration, like this perfume ad for Chanel No. 5 with Marilyn Monroe I was inspired by for this Pinterest contest. Also, old Disney movie intros or any old movie company that has some sort of aesthetic, recognizable name brand intro. I also do it with Snow White and Alice in Wonderland.
Cleaning incense off your vinyl shelf, 'cause we lost track of time again. Laughing with my feet in your lap, like you were my closest friend. How'd we end up on the floor anyway? You say your roommate's cheap ass screw top rosé. That's how I see you every day now. And I chose you, the one I was dancing with in New York. No shoes, the dark, and the sky, and it was.
I also do it with Sleeping Beauty.
My t-shirt when you splashed your wine into me, and how the blood rushed into my cheeks, so scarlet it was. The mark you saw on my collarbone, the rust that grew between telephones, the lips I used to call home, so scarlet it was. When the silence came, we were shaking, blind and hazy. How the hell did we lose sight of us again?
On that note, I actually really love to use visuals again from all sorts of different movies. Use these still frames for thumbnail backgrounds. Zoom in on specific patterns. It works as a visual base. Doesn't even need to be for a thumbnail. It could be for literally whatever you want. One surprisingly powerful source of inspiration is IRT, image rehearsal therapy, a technique originally developed to help people rewrite recurring nightmares. Instead of accepting a dream exactly as it is, you consciously change the setting, characters, ending, or symbolism into something new. While it's a clinical therapy, I think it's also an incredible creative exercise because it trains you to transform existing ideas into original ones. A dream about getting lost in a forest could become a fantasy novel, a short film, a painting, or a metaphor for a character's emotional journey. Many creative breakthroughs happen this way, not by creating something from nothing, but by asking, what if it happened differently? I love this technique because it turns dreams, memories, and random mental images into raw materials for stories, artwork, videos, characters, and entirely new worlds. One of the most fascinating sources of inspiration is the work of Japanese neuroscientist Yukiyasu Kamitani, whose research has come surprisingly close to decoding dream imagery from brain activity. Participants left inside fMRI scanners while researchers recorded their brain activity and woke them to describe their dreams. By combining those reports with machine learning, Kamitami's team could identify visual categories like people, buildings, books, and cars at above chance accuracy. Later studies even began reconstructing rough images from what people were seeing or imaging based on brain signals. Scientists still can't replay dreams like a movie, but this research suggests dreams contain far more structured visual information than we once believed. I find that incredibly inspiring because it reminds us dreams aren't just random, they're rich with emotions, symbols, stories, aesthetics, and ideas. The fact that science is slowly learning to visualize them makes dreams feel like an undiscovered art form hidden inside your own mind. One of my favorite creative techniques comes from Only Yesterday by Izio Takahata. Many childhood memories are framed with soft white space, faded edges, and unfinished watercolor backgrounds instead of being fully rendered, like the present-day scenes. This intentional choice makes the memories feel distant, fragile, and dreamlike, reflecting how we remember emotions and fragments more vividly than every detail. I love this because it shows inspiration can come from studying tiny artistic decisions, not just the story itself. I've even borrowed this technique in some of my own YouTube videos by adding soft white vignettes and faded edges. Most viewers probably never notice it consciously, but subtle visual choices like these can completely change the emotional feeling of a scene, making it feel more nostalgic, reflective, or dreamlike.
Sobbing with your head in your hands, ain't that the way shit always ends? You were standing hollow-eyed in the hallway, carnations you had thought were roses, that's us. I feel you know better.
Super quick one is just drawing random shit that feels cute and comes to mind using the basic markup tools on the photo app. I designed this screen for a 50 outfits video along with a grain overlay too. Now whatever field you're trying to draw inspiration from, remember you can always use other creators who make the same art form as inspiration to draw. If you paint, look at other painters' work. If you write, create videos, you know, it goes on and on. Sometimes I'll make a video and I'll base it off the 2008/9 beauty guru old school YouTube aesthetic. I'll add in clips from these videos as example for things I made in the video. Use music from the similar era and genre to replicate a similar scene and ambiance. Use the old school 2009 fonts and black screens, etc. just as a reference.
This will remove any impurities and excess sebum from your skin.
A whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. No one to tell us no, where to go, or say we're only dreaming. A whole new world.
Hi, sweetie.
On your land,
Number one, right?
a dazzling place I never knew. But when I'm way up here, it's crystal clear.
One of my favorite places to find inspiration is vintage book covers from the 1940s through the 1970s. They have a unique aesthetic that's hard to find today. Hand-painted illustrations, soft color palettes, expressive typography, dreamy lighting, and a nostalgic sincerity that modern designs often lack. Looking through them can inspire color palettes, fashion, character design, stories, videos, and mood boards. Because they are created for digital design, every detail was illustrated by hand, giving them a warmth and personality that feels incredibly human. I especially love old teen fiction covers because they capture emotions like loneliness, curiosity, friendship, first love, and self-discovery through subtle expressions, clothing, lighting, and composition. Even without reading the book, you can learn so much from how a single image tells an entire story. They remind me that inspiration doesn't always come from the newest trends. Sometimes it comes from rediscovering forgotten aesthetics that still feel magical decades later. If you grew up watching Barbie movies, you most likely know what this necklace is. I think even a few years ago people were making them on TikTok, but anyway, I love them and think they're so gorgeous. But they are also just pretty backgrounds and visuals as well. I always liked the little mirror in this movie, it was really cute. Now, I don't know exactly why you're watching this video, but if it's for jewelry inspiration, this one is a given. Even at that, watching any other Barbie movie or cartoon that has jewelry and use that as inspiration too. Some people say you can't find a cartoon character's outfit or style cute, but that's a total lie. You can like anything. You need to be flexible and open to be able to find inspiration. If you paint this, use these visuals as inspiration too. If you make videos, use it as B-roll clips. I've done this kind before when talking about something kind of relevant to these scenes, but sometimes I stretch things a bit. Use it for a design, use it for a card, a gift, anything. When you're watching a show and really tune in, you can see how sometimes the angles and shots are ordered and shown a little differently than usual. Let me use as an example because I was watching this one show and noticed an angle detail I liked. See how a typical shot goes for this show. They show the two characters speaking, and after a bit it may go back and forth between focusing on just one of the characters and then the other one. Then it'll go back to being shot to the original position it was in. What's different about a typical scene like that and this scene is that they are doing almost like a time-lapse. Well, not really a time-lapse. I'm not totally sure the word, but the way it plays back and forth between him talking to different people, focusing on just the main point of his conversation with each girl, and then it pans back to being shot like a regular scene. mild obsession with instrumental soundtracks to movies, the songs with no lyrics but still very cinematic and emotional. I love moody music, and I feel like movie soundtracks always are, or they just make me happy for whatever reason because, like I said, they're cinematic. Sometimes I'll use them for inspiration for background music, or even just listen to them to think of an idea for something I want to have a similar tone to. If it's a happy song, I'll put it over a happy or least neutral video, and vice versa, but I always keep an eye out for music soundtracks. They don't even need to be live action. I actually love cartoon soundtracks. I mean, I know everyone loves the Kingdom Dance from Tangled. From is older versions of modern things and devices. Let me give some examples because this can sound super vague.